up, Rippers? It's the Sea Captain, Captain Coots, and I'm here to present Part 3 of my 3-part series, the Time Flies, Life Dies, Phoenix Rise PowerPoint project. So the album was released by Canibus and Bronze Nazareth on May 12th, 2015 on RBC Records. It's available now through iTunes, Amazon, Best Buy, or through your local music retailer. If you haven't picked up a copy of the album already, I'd highly suggest you do so. It's probably my favorite Canibus album to date. If you haven't checked out parts 1 and 2 of the project already, I'd again highly suggest you check those out. I kind of provide a bit more detail in part 1 about the outline and the purpose for the series. But I'll touch upon it in quick detail here. What I'm trying to accomplish is to present a high-level review and analysis of the album under 3 key themes. This is part 3, and so I'll be talking about the Phoenix Rising, and this is representative through tracks 14 through 17, which is Igloo music through to the outro, where I can get around it. And what's important to consider is that each theme can be studied in relation to 3 specific perspectives, that being Canibus the MC, hip-hop culture, or global events, or what's going on right now. And I'm doing this for 2 main reasons. The first is to build upon the existing reviews and provide a more thorough analysis of the album from a Canibus fan's perspective. One thing I really want to highlight as it pertains to part 3 is that the incorporation of esoteric elements, and particularly in this instance, you'll be hearing from someone with first-hand experience in the art of infinite mixing through Poet Laureate Infinity, and I'm going to be spending a good chunk of the time in this part of the series talking about the infinity concept, I guess as it's highlighted in these songs, and also its impact on hip hop going forward. And I guess in terms of the understanding of ancient and occult knowledge, occult is often kind of used simultaneously with esoteric or in place of. Those knowledge and teachings will not be heavily covered here, but they are heavily present, especially in these tracks. I feel that I'm not a good authority to speak on these subjects. I'm sure there are more rippers who are more qualified than I am to talk about some of these themes. So for the purposes of this project, I won't be discussing those matters in much detail, but rather I'll be focusing more on the music and on Infinity specifically. So the second reason why I'm doing this project is just to demonstrate constant support and to help bring these discussions into wider discourse. As I mentioned in part 2, I think it's more important for the fans to step up and to play a role in help to bring these ideas into the broader discourse, especially for an artist like Canibus, who has faced such resistance from the hip-hop culture, the industry, and even from fans, just in terms of having your music accepted and heard on a wider level. So I think it's important for the fans to really kind of argue why they need to consider this material and why it's important. So this series is kind of one way for me to help do that. And to show my appreciation for Canibus's music and the role it's had on shaping my life, at least thus far. So, because for me, I guess music it's more than entertainment. That's the main reason why I'm undertaking this right now. As I have in the previous 2 presentations, I want to read the disclaimer in full. The views and opinions expressed in each presentation represent those of the author and do not reflect the official policy or position of Canibus and his team, and I reserve the right to adjust my personal stance based on the attainment of new knowledge, information, and facts pertinent to the information contained within. Also, please be aware that there may be some casual swearing. I'll try to censor myself as much as possible, and at the same time, I'll try to speak slowly. I do have a tendency to speak quickly and mumble a bit, so apologies if I come across that way, which is a very distinct possibility, so be warned. And thirdly, I am recording these back to back, so if I do get a bit raspy, please understand. But with that being said, let's get to the final chapter. So first, I want to talk a bit about the Phoenix itself. So Many of you are aware of the myth of the phoenix. This mythical bird is said to live 500 years, and at the time of its death, it creates a nest, and while still in it, sets it on fire. Out of the ashes of its own demise springs a new phoenix, and it's known to represent everlasting life, rebirth, resurrection, and immortality, along with such qualities as vision, great beauty, undying inspiration, and awareness, among others. So this story is adapted to fit many cultures and religions. So on an individual level, our lives can represent the rising of the phoenix, enduring strength and overcoming adversity we face in all our lives. And on a more global level, the phoenix can symbolize the rise and fall of world orders. So the phoenix symbol is heavily linked to secret societies and the worship of birds. Which is something, again, I remarked before about occult knowledge and esotericism. Again, it's something that is very present in this material, but again, it's something that I don't feel fully qualified to speak about, but it is there. So I would suggest doing your research. I'm in the process of, or I'm in the ever growing process of learning more about this stuff. So again, if there are those who have more knowledge, who feel comfortable speaking on it, I'd highly suggest you do so. Otherwise, in the meantime, do your research and see what it's all about. So moving on to the first track of this part, Igloo music. So this track in particular, I think, has multiple references to infinity. As you can see in the bottom right there, the fully articulated skeletal non-human remains. It's obvious I make music in a cave, and I find it funny in a few ways, because an igloo itself can be considered a cave. But regardless, I think the first lines of the track kind of at least lead me to believe that this track is heavily referencing infinity. Hardware interprets software. In my case, I am the hardware. I do it by hand, like lawn care. So hardware are the physical components of a computer, whereas software are the instructions stored and run by the hardware. So for me, and something that I've noticed definitely more recently, is that Canibus draws inspiration from his mixes, and because they're a product of his hard work. Canibus has stated on multiple occasions, whether it be through the Conspiracy Worldwide radio interviews, or even through some lines in tracks like on Fait Accompli and even on Time Flies, that he's very proud of the mixes and he enjoys listening to them. And I know the fans, even myself, I definitely draw inspiration from listening to these tracks, and then even trying to replicate some of the lines that you hear. And then replicate them through Igloo. To me, it's a way of helping to keep the music alive, and as a way to kind of build some kind of cohesivity. I don't think that's a word, but anyway, some cohesion. That's it. Between the existing catalog and then the ever-growing catalog. So I guess. In part, I guess moving to a slightly different subject, I think the opening lines of the second verse kind of displays Canibus's new style of braggadocio. I'll read it out to you. Give me a second. Yeah, specifically, I'm the private sector dark pool director, black budget investor, black star planet X professor, Eastern philosophy nihilist, Lord Shiva playing four violins, exchanging knowledge with the neighboring tribesmen. So again, I think this is something that I touched upon in part two, was that I guess Canibus takes pride in kind of challenging himself through his music. And I got the quote there: "Potty mouth poetry, please. I does that with relative ease." So to me, it's kind of obvious that again, like in terms of enhancing the subject matter, the vocabulary, it's all a way of expanding Canibus's ability as an artist. And so these more kind of bragging and boasting lines are a good example of that, rather than talking about kind of military equipment, missiles, rifles, guns, whatever. It's kind of taken a more kind of like philosophic kind of ancient twist to it. But it's still kind of it's still the same. It's still a similar style. I guess in terms of talking about a similar style, I wanted to kind of take a second to talk about biomimicry, which is sustainable solutions to human challenges by emulating nature's time-tested patterns and strategies. So for me, I think I kind of, in terms of hip-hop, I think chopping and mixing lyrics can be kind of related back to Kool Herc's invention of breakbeat DJing. So again, bringing it down to its biomimicry, it's again kind of creating a new style of hip hop. Like Infinity, I'm speaking of Infinity, kind of like a new style of hip hop that is very reminiscent and kind of calls back to the origins of the culture and of the music. So I kind of thought that was really interesting after looking into it a bit more. And then finally, I wanted to point to just the quote, resurrection after atrocity, just because, as I talked about before with the phoenix, about kind of setting its own nest on fire and emerging from the ashes. I think the term resurrection after atrocity can be seen in Canibus's career kind of many times over. And speaking of the phoenix specifically, there are many bird references on the track, which again I wanted just to highlight and found kind of interesting. So, but yeah. So again, really dope track. But again, I think there's a lot of references to Infinity. At least that I've noticed, and that what I've chosen to focus on. So again, my musical machinations will abate them, but only if they stop hating, and then come sit with me. You don't really want to spit with me without injury. One day I'ma do it for infinity. The complexity of it all is so simple. I record the experience onto lithium crystal. So again, like to me, like it's like you can't really describe or analyze this track without talking about Infinity. So moving on to the next track, Seismoluminescence, which kind of literally can be translated as earthquake light. And just the opening kind of sample, it's really nice when more of our human friends come to the party and see the light. And to me, this is a call to action for cannabis mixers and fans alike. Kind of, what's your gift? What's your talent? And it's really reminiscent of a few years back when Canibus put out the inquiries regarding the Rip the Jacker B team, the Bravo Squad. I remember filling out the form, and there's kind of a lot of different boxes you can check out. You could check off in terms of what skills you could bring to the table. Like, were you a mixer? Were you a good artist? Were you a lyricist? So just in terms of kind of gauging what the fan base had to offer in terms of helping to promote future releases down the line. And I know a lot of people were kind of waiting to hear back or to see kind of what that turned into. And whereas it hasn't really kind of formed into anything concrete as of yet, I think it's going to become only more important as time goes by and kind of the more releases start to come together in preparation for Rip the Jacker to Infinity, should it ever come to fruition. So for me, when I heard that kind of opening kind of sample, again, it's really nice when more of our human friends come to the party. It's kind of just like a kind of not a wake up call, but just kind of another check mark to say, okay, like things are starting to ramp up a bit and to sharpen those skills. Because for me personally, at that time, I wasn't. I hadn't started mixing. I hadn't really got into any writing, or I'm not really an artistic person when it comes to drawing or using computer art. But and kind of in the time between when Rip the Jacker to Infinity was first announced, kind of after Lyrical Law, up until now, I've been kind of, again, practicing my mixing, kind of getting better, learning more, putting these videos together, kind of building different kind of facets that I think could be useful in terms of helping to promote future releases down the line. So I think that's a big takeaway that I'm hoping fans kind of take to heart when listening to this and kind of considering what they can do going forward, which is something I'll talk about in a few slides. But again, because one thing that I think this track does kind of emphasize is Infinity as kind of the next evolutionary and creative step in hip-hop. And I pulled the quote, 555 cloud storage, cybernetics performed as expected. The human brain is now a barbarous relic. Again, I think it's kind of just a flat-out statement that in terms of the music that's being kind of produced nowadays, it's kind of very generic. But with Infinity, again, like there's kind of infinite possibilities that you can take from the original kind of pool of lyrics. And at least what I've found thus far, and when I make my mixes, is that the amount of connections that you can make in the track even if just from chopping couplets or lines down to individual words and phrases, and then creating whole new ones just by putting different sounds and prefixes and suffixes together. It's quite amazing. So just kind of envisioning that kind of multiplied by 10 for Rip the Jacker to Infinity, like it's really exciting for someone like myself to see kind of what the next step would be, but also why it's so important to hip hop, and that the conditions need to be right before it's released, because otherwise it runs the risk of kind of getting pushed to the side, much like Blue has, in my opinion. Anywho. And I think for further evidence that Infinity plays a very key role in this track as well is the inclusion of RT Jibo on the extended version. I think it reinforces the Infinity theme. And for those who don't know, Rip the Robot is a perpetual poetry drone. Is kind of I guess this aspect was really kind of developed further. I guess first by the Ripper Tussin. Shout out kind of conceptualizing kind of Rip the Robot and Infinity in the form of like an Iron Man suit, and then also Complex or Pirate on his Evidence of Infinity 3 tape with Canibus. There's a track Rip the Robot, and they really kind of go into that in a lot more detail there. It's a really great work. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. And what I find really interesting is that Jibo's verse actually uses vocals from the album version, as well as other Canibus acapellas. So I thought that was really neat, well done, and a really fantastic mix in my opinion. And then I guess two kind of items that aren't necessarily related to Infinity that I just really liked from the track. The first were just the number of references to rivers. Which in a lot of cases are the cradles of civilization, like river systems in the Mediterranean, the Mesopotamia, India, China, and even Egypt kind of helped foster our first recognized civilizations. And I guess as we build on the foundation set forth by these civilizations, the new standards can also bring us kind of further away from our ancient ancestors, even though a lot of the tools and practices that they developed, we still rely on them today. To help kind of build upon our quality of life. But in a lot of respects, those same systems are now kind of being exploited to kind of separate us from it as well. Like for a lot of instances, like food production is really separated from urban centers to more rural areas. It's kind of really being separated from the population. One example of what I'm trying to speak on there. So again, just something that I really liked in this track. And then finally, just the reference to above so below, which is a maxim in Hermeticism, which is often used to describe oneself, the microcosm, synonymously with the universe, macrocosm. So again, I know I said before that I was going to really talk about esoteric or occultism in great detail, but I wanted to share this kind of point, which I found interesting, was that around the fait accompli when that was released, and people were talking about synflation. And I know someone remarked that about the line again. Keep an eye on the micro, but notice the macro, or vice versa. I can't remember. And someone was really convinced that he was talking about economics, like microeconomics and macroeconomics, which kind of makes sense with the title being synflation, inflation. But for me, I always felt all along that it referred to the microcosm and the macrocosm. So it's just interesting, again, just the different perspectives that we all kind of take when listening to the music. And so, but in terms of a hermetic sense, the microcosm and macrocosm kind of represent how should I put this, or kind of displayed or kind of representative in the mechanical laws that kind of govern the universe, or like the same mechanical laws that govern the universe are present in humans on planet Earth. So, and I know Gurdjieff, the main example he uses is that kind of when planets kind of come to a close alignment in each other through their rotations, how that activity kind of seems to resonate on Earth, and instances of planets kind of approaching each other in their solar cycles kind of seem to have an effect to us on planet Earth. I always found that a bit interesting. And then also just the fact that kind of understanding one leads to understanding of the other. So again, this is just something that, like, the two items that kind of really kind of just brought my attention, or at least piqued my attention outside of kind of the references to infinity. Okay, going on to the next track, Formula One, produced by Domingo. I feel the title itself can refer to the infinity concept and its anticipated impact on the music industry. And it is important to note that I know only some fans have disengaged from the mainstream hip hop musical culture. Whereas I know Canibus kind of was quoted as saying that, again, poets should be rappers, rappers should be lyricists. The current industry model collapse is imminent, and where in some cases, I think that's definitely the case, because I think things look a lot different now than they did even in 2007 when it comes to the music industry and how music is released and put out and promoted and things like that. But it's still seen as kind of the primary source or primary method for putting out artists on and getting music out to a wide audience. But so in terms of Formula One, as in like Formula One race, I think it can mean like the race to 10,000 bars or rip the jacker to infinity, and the fact that, as Business stated previously, that the bars, they're already written, or it's already been recorded. It's just a matter of kind of tying the ends on the other parts of the project. And as a project such as big as this is, then that's still a feat in itself. But the fact that it's already set in stone, kind of like how I talked about a bit before about the algorithmic feature, how it's kind of like this, is this happening? So it's just a matter of getting to that endpoint, and there's still a lot of kind of steps that need to be taken before that happens. And if we don't take some of those steps, then we may never get there. But I think that the fact that with the title specifically, like Formula One, that it's already been won, it's already done. So it's just a matter of kind of getting to the end point. And I think specifically, again, keeping on the infinity theme, I think the second verse can be partially interpreted as describing the mixers themselves and their willingness to learn from Canibus's music. So just give me a second, and I'm going to pull that up just to quote some lyrics. All right. Okay, so user-generated generation XYZ station, they park their spaceship right on the pavement. Formula One champagne sun, automatic pneumatic lung, by Big Gun Domingo on the drums. So oftentimes, like the Plu audio workstations have been described as spaceships, and this is kind of most recently evident in the promo track for Time Flies, Don't Ruin It for Everyone, or Detox Infinity. Rick the Robot raps about the first Plu spaceship and everything. So when you hear kind of those references to spaceship in this manner, you, like, at least I think of Plu right away. And of course, also back to the line in Rip vs. Poet Laureate, music generated, user generated, mixing board entertainment for your mental entrainment. So again, and as I said, the first line of that second verse in Formula One, user-generated generation XYZ station. There's a direct link there, but I just wanted to again put the point in there. Then it's always so you always have to be aware of the messages that you mix. Just like if you're trying to communicate something online, as I talked about before, like. You want to be clear and respectful, and again, you're using a medium that you didn't personally invent, or you're kind of how should I put this? Again, you're making use of this new kind of form of hip hop, so you really need to be aware of how you use it, I guess, for lack of a better term. Though I know it's not the best description, but in other words, just be aware of what you say and what you mix. So, and finally, I think, at least in this track, I think Canibus is imploring his fans to step up and undertake work to kind of help promote and spread these ideas. Especially, again, if you can't do nothing, you need to improve, goddammit, because complaining about the music or the methods won't really help anyone in the long run. Again, you're really kind of just stalling things and kind of diverting the conversation to kind of non-important aspects, whereas if you kind of refocus those efforts into something a bit more productive, then I think we'd all be better off for it, and we'd be able to get further and make progress and get closer to Rip the Jacker to infinity specifically. So anyway, I guess finally with regard to this track, I just want to talk about the quote there: "Life is about learning to live with what you can't control. The soul plays a substantial role." I think it can refer to both hip hop and the broader world. In terms of the broader world first, I guess specifically the powers that be in the material world. Again, those who are in charge and kind of help really dictate, I guess the global rules and institutions that kind of help dictate the way we live our life. A lot of it's kind of based on kind of controlling those factors that, I guess, for lack of a better term, that do impact our world. I'm kind of repeating myself in that regard. Sorry about that. But even after kind of a primary kind of understanding or research kind of into some of these societies, they do realize that there are things that they can't control. But in the meantime, they're directing their efforts to controlling what they can in order to either make life better for themselves or to direct the world into their particular vision. So that's kind of something that I found interesting. I know I didn't explain it quite well, but something to consider. And then secondly, kind of something that irked me at least a bit. Of course, nowadays when we hear control, a lot of people kind of turn to the Big Sean, Kendrick Lamar, and Jay Electronica track from 2013. And something that really bugged me about that was just in terms of Kendrick's verse, and whereas in the past Canibus had done something similar. I think most specifically for me on Rip Rock, the last track off Can I Bus, when he really kind of called out a lot of those within hip hop culture, not just the artists themselves, but the DJs and the media outlets and things like that. It's just in terms of how they how they give back. So whereas when Canibus did it, everyone kind of got really uppity about it and kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of blackballed him for it. Whereas when Kendrick does it, like all these years later, he kind of gets praised for it and kind of really gets promoted for it. So I guess, like, to me, like the actions themselves weren't all that dissimilar, but the reactions to them were. And so for me, again, like someone who's kind of coming into it from a bit of an outside perspective, that seems kind of very inconsistent to me and unfair in some ways. So again, I can go on for a bit more about that, but again, that's for another time. So, I guess, yeah, to summarize again, like this track once more, again, like there are some very direct references to infinity, and you can really begin to see kind of how much it has an impact on Canibus's individual career, where he thinks hip hop's going, and then also the infinity concept as well. Again, it's something that I haven't really talked about here, but in terms of what it means, kind of in a more spiritual sense, and. Again, that's probably for another time closer to RTJ2 that we can get into that. So the last track on the album, the outro, or I Can Get Around It, produced by Kevlar 7. Rest in peace, Wise Man Forever. That's a picture of him on the right there. I think this is my favorite track on the album. It's very dense, so I tried to do my best just to pull out a few points to talk about here. But for me, it was very reminiscent of Lullaby of Champions off of Lyrical Law, released in 2011. And I think just mainly in trying to kind of rally support, and before kind of everything is lost. And so, much like This Is Rome, and like the outro track kind of speaks on being led astray by our current leaders and our current way of life. And I think the quote, "The sound of annihilation is quiet," is very telling. Because that's in a lot of ways what soft power can do. You don't really even realize that these changes are occurring, because it's more on a if you want to use the term subconscious level, whereas everyone can kind of see like military and economic strength in terms of being influenced culturally. A lot of people will take that as just kind of being organic or kind of just kind of growing up, whereas in some instances, kind of what you see is put there for a reason. It's put there to influence you towards a specific path or a specific end goal or something, for lack of a better term. So again, like those two tracks to me are very similar in terms of, again, trying to rally support and trying to, and for lack of a better term, kind of wake people up to change the way that they're operating, the way they're moving. And I think the principle of living righteous relates back to the beginning of the album, specifically integrity. I think the infatuation with material items directs money and efforts that would be better served elsewhere. And I think overall we make life more difficult than it should be. Again, like when you're trying to think about or kind of trying to conceptualize these very kind of big ideas, for instance, like a life without money or things of that nature, it seems very easy. Or you could foresee a situation where it'd be very easy that things would break down, and that people would easily turn on each other because, as Fitz said, and I very much agree with it, hate is inspired by survival. And I feel, and kind of going back to what I was talking about as well in part 2, in terms of the use of social media, I think in some ways that's making it harder for us to communicate with one another. In such a situation where there is this kind of big kind of cataclysmic change, like for instance, like the fall of the U.S. as a hegemonic power, to hark back to part 2, kind of that time in between that new order, whatever it would be, whether it be kind of, I guess whether it be more so like Luciferian based in terms of being kind of nefarious, or if it would kind of be more righteous based, kind of in getting to that point, that's kind of the time in between is very critical. So again, these sorts of ideas, it's easy to conceptualize, but in a lot of respects, in terms of how you get from point A to B to C, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot you can be fearful about. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who believe that we can get to those points without having to resort to violence and things of that nature. So, but again, as things seem to go right now, it's kind of hard to see how that would be the case. But I do personally believe that that's still possible. But anywho, I guess more on that later. And also want to talk about cycles of time and karma and kind of what goes around comes around. So the concept that time and thus life are cyclical, it's prominent in Eastern philosophies, like Hinduism, for instance, and is heavily featured in the Mayan calendar. And I guess just as kind of a bit of an abstract idea, I think in hip-hop terms, there could be kind of a connection to going from the golden era to more kind of the silver dollar era, and then now kind of in the Bronze Age, which is kind of interesting, just with Bronze Nazareth and his role on the album. And because again, like this album has just from listening to it front to back, it's a lot about kind of going back to the roots of hip hop culture and kind of what made it, especially Canibus, kind of fall in love with it in the first place. So again, like it's kind of like, okay, what's the next kind of stage of that cycle then? Kind of reverting back. So we're in the golden era, kind of in the silver dollar area through kind of the 2000s and even into now. And then we've got to go back to the Bronze Age, kind of before you can really kind of get back to the golden era. So again, a bit more abstract, but something that I was kind of considering and wanted to bring forth just in discussions around the album. And finally, the last 2 points I think are very interrelated. Got to make a decision, got to decide. It don't always work out how you want sometimes. And then energy return on energy invested. So I think for Canibus personally, I think if you were to ask, again, if you ask me as someone who's become very familiar with his career, I think I can say that I don't know of any other artist who's given so much to hip-hop but gotten so little in return. And I know, again, it doesn't matter who the best is, and as a fan, I would argue, and I think I can make an objective argument that I feel that he's the best. But I think, as I've said previously, I think for me to help demonstrate that, I think it's more productive if I were to take up mixing and to kind of take up projects such as these to show my appreciation and at least to argue my opinion, argue my point, rather than just trying to say it outright, and whether it be through discussions that I have with friends, enemies alike, or just online, just trying to put my opinion out there just for anyone to read. I think people would take it a lot more seriously if you kind of have something more tangible that you could kind of present as a way to kind of to really represent yourself and to show your opinion and everything. So I think, again, return on energy invested, it just doesn't pertain to Canibus as an artist, but I think it pertains to us as a fan base in terms of if we really want Canibus to succeed and be recognized for all the work that he's done for hip hop, then I think we really need to buckle down and kind of reconsider how we're operating as a fan base, and then kind of using that energy to help try to make something better out of it. So I kind of want to end it on that point. And I think with the most recent announcement by M80 with regard to the Best Of project and how it's going to be A&R'd by the Rippers, I think this is a good first step, just to try to build some cohesiveness in the fan base, and then also to kind of make a point that Canibus hasn't fallen off in the past 6 years or so. He's been on RBC, so it's like Melatonin Magic, Undergods, Almighty, Fait Accompli, Time Flies. Not sure if I'm missing one in between there, but anywho, again, just picking at least our favorite tracks from these albums and putting it on for a best of, just as a way to kind of showcase. It's like, okay, here, these are examples of dynamite tracks that you need to listen to help kind of change some of these narratives that Canibus really fell off after Rip the Jack or whatnot, whatever people are saying. So I know it's probably not what people were expecting when it was first announced, but I think you need to look at it at a different way and realize that, again, that this is one step towards kind of really changing those narratives and changing people's minds, because I think, again, I think you always need to kind of be open-minded in that respect. If you're presented with new facts that really change your opinion, then you shouldn't be afraid to change your opinion if the facts kind of dictate as such. And quite frankly, the facts are out there to support, I guess, the theory of Canibus being one of the top 5 MCs dead or alive, which is what I believe. So I'm going to do my best to kind of help promote that. So I guess to summarize this part of the series, from the Phoenix Rise theme from the perspective of Canibus, so I guess really consider that the idea that nothing is gained without sacrifice, and putting this notion into practice, that the infinity concept is vital to Canibus's career, but he's still not widely recognized for it. And just in general, the final third of the album is widely regarded as its strongest feature. And this is an example of the Phoenix rising once more, so to speak. So with regard to hip-hop, I think a return to the golden era is in reach. And as from the first album, Can I Bus, from one of the interludes, from the old to the new. So I think that's very very poignant in terms of what I think what a lot of people would like to see, what a lot of hip hop heads would like to see, kind of a return to kind of the golden era of hip hop and that sound and that kind of energy. So I thought that was very poignant, and I wanted to highlight that. So, and I think another kind of key summarizing theme here is that fans take on a more direct approach to supporting their favorite artists, and that infinite mixing is one avenue to demonstrate this initiative. And so again, I'm willing to make myself open as a resource for anyone looking to get into mixing. You can give me a shout if you have any questions, or if you need help with anything. I can do my best to help out as much as possible. I think that the more people who start mixing, I think the better. And like myself, I started to kind of prepare myself for the Jacket to Infinity when it gets out, and I think in a lot of respects, kind of the delays only help in that regard. So if you haven't got into it, or if you're looking to get into it, I think now's a great time. And if you have mixed before and you kind of stopped, then I'd be curious to know why. But regardless, if you're not willing to have a discussion on that, I just say, hey, you might want to get into it, because I think a lot of things are going to be going down in the lead up to Earth the Jacket to Infinity. So something to keep in mind. And then finally, in terms of the Phoenix Rising from a hip-hop perspective, I think hip-hop can be reestablished as a primary source for social change, or conversely, again, real hip-hop is lost forever. That's kind of relating to, again, like the dueling concepts of the Phoenix Rise, again, like the first being more spiritual and the second being the rise of a new world order kind of globally. I think kind of that dichotomy in with regard to the Phoenix Rising on a global scale can also affect hip-hop as well, because as I've talked about and as I believe, corporate interests have definitely infiltrated the culture, for lack of a better term, and it is kind of and it does play a role in directing it to kind of a route that is kind of has gone further and further away from its original purpose, and for someone from an outsider to kind of see that. And it's pretty clear. I can only imagine what some of the older, like the OGs and the established guys and girls in the game, how they're feeling at times, because it's something kind of like taken right from your hands and kind of reshaped and reformed and then repackaged as something kind of completely different, and that's kind of one of the worst things that can happen to someone. So. And finally, I think, again, this part of the album, and especially the last track, it really questions why it's so difficult to live righteously. I think which in some ways relates to the ever-increasing role of materialism in our world, and materialism just not in the sense of kind of things that we can purchase, but just in terms of what we consider to be important. I remember reading an article about kind of like the most fulfilling jobs out there, and the most fulfilling jobs for a lot of people were those that were involved with working directly with another person or helping someone out, like working in like healthcare or things of that nature, versus kind of working in sales or manufacturing or kind of like creating products that are kind of being shipped all across the world. Like that kind of has a lot less meaning than kind of having a direct impact on someone's life and using your experiences to help to help someone through a dark time or whatnot. So again, like I think it is. I agree that it is more difficult to live righteously nowadays, but it's not impossible. Again, you have to make that choice for yourself, and in a lot of respects, you put yourself in a negative position by doing so, because the world's just not geared that way right now. But in terms of where I think where we need to go, I think some difficult I guess discussions need to be had, and some sacrifices will need to be made. So, and again, I'm hoping that it doesn't mean any physical sacrifices. I know, again, speaking a bit on the occultism, I think others would disagree and feel that's the way we need to go, whether it be through warfare or through their magic, but. I don't think that's necessary, and I really hope it doesn't resort to that. So in some ways I hate to end on that note, but in some ways, again, I think it does underscore kind of the I guess the need for change and kind of really kind of emphasizes where we're at and kind of and how much work still needs to be done. So again, I kind of hate to end on that sour note, but in some ways that's kind of how I felt after listening to the album, where I thought it was a great celebration of Canibus's kind of career up to this point, and I think it's, again, as I said, it's my favorite album. But after listening to that last track, again, it really kind of made me think, and was really introspective. Again, much like I felt after Lullaby of Champions, it's like, okay, what can I do to kind of help make things better? So as I said repeatedly, that's kind of been the goal of this project. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's the end of part 3. If you want to discuss this more, whether it be about the project itself, about cannabis, or the music in particular, you can get at me at Twitter. My SoundCloud's there, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Talk in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many messages as I can. If you got a dissenting opinion, don't be afraid to share it, but please be respectful if you do. And otherwise, hope everyone's doing well, and yeah, see you sooner rather than later. All right, peace.